there's a disease called ITP, idiopathic thrombocytopenia. I explain idiopathic that the idiots don't understand the pathogenesis. And so that's why they call all these diseases idiopathic, but we understand the pathogenesis. So how it causes disease is what pathogenesis means. James Bucell in New York City had called me. One of his postdocs, his students, had read the paper and said, gee, we have a lot of fatigue in crippling fatigue in pain in ITP. It's a platelet disease. It's a clotting of blood factor disease. And so we're starting to think it's often been associated with viruses, and they don't know what causes it. Well, kids, including my husband's eldest grandson, who's now 18, was diagnosed with ITP after an MMR vaccination. And so MMR vaccination lists ITP as a side effect. Huh. And so I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it at the time because everybody just blamed that sibling, that mom, for that child's Asperger's, because he got ITP and none of us knew it, and then he got Asperger's because it's, again, the stigma. People are shamed. People don't talk. They hide these diseases in the closet the way we used to hide cancer. But a lot of people talk to me now because of the book, and that's why we do it. So at any rate, the ITP is listed as a possible side effect of MMR. Yeah, and so we isolated, so I did studies with James Bucell as his laboratory, and they sent me totally blinded samples, and about a third of the samples were positive for the envelopes of XMRV. So they had the components of the virus, and the patients were making immune response. And so we firmly linked the virus to some cases of ITP. And so the lots of the vaccines that are contaminated, the most heaviest contaminated, are going to cause the disease because platelets don't live very long, so you can clear the infected cell. If you get lucky and you aren't really loaded with it, you'll just, unfortunately get the autism.
Dr. Mickovic has co-authored more than 50 peer-reviewed publications and book chapters in the book Plague, One Scientist's Intrepid Search for the Truth About Human Retroviruses and Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, Autism, and Other Diseases. Her pioneering work during her 20-year career at the National Cancer Institute includes the discovery of the modulation of DNA methylation machinery by human retroviral infection and the development of the concept of inflammatory cytokines and chemokine signatures of infection and disease, which was first published in 1999 when she directed the Laboratory of Antiviral Drug Mechanisms in developing therapeutics and diagnostics for HIV/AIDS and AIDS-associated malignancies. These are therapies that are still standard of care 25 years later and credited with saving millions of deaths from HIV/AIDS. You can learn more about her at marcinc.org, marcinc.org. Jodi, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Wendy. I appreciate it.
Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your story and your experience with vaccine research?
Well, it's interesting because my story, as you know, I'm a biochemist and molecular biologist with a PhD. And I spent 22 years at the National Cancer Institute looking at basically how viruses cause cancer and the immune response to viruses contribute to cancers and any number of diseases, including autism and myalgic encephalitis.